Good evening, all you ghouls and gals. Welcome to the Booze and Bourbon Halloween Spooktacular. It's almost that time of year. Everybody loves to celebrate their fears. But I'll tell you what scares me the most. The podcast filled with ghouls and ghouls. A little bourbon may be good right now. I think a drink may calm me down. I know everybody's scared of me, but this podcast is terrifying. Ooh. It's the Booze and Bourbon Podcast. Halloween October Spooktacular.
Welcome back, everybody, to the third installment of the awesome Spooktacular by Booze and Bourbon.
Hi, Jen. How are you today?
Just dandy. How are you?
Good. You know, spooky season is about halfway through before Halloween happens. And all of my downtime, I've just been wanting to watch spooky stuff. How about you?
Well, I think we talked about this briefly, but I was wondering why I was having trouble sleeping for the past 2 weeks. Then I'm like, wait, maybe it's because I watch something horror related before I go to bed every single night. So that's definitely probably part of the problem.
Well, it's funny you say that because I was with our film crew from Haunted this week filming another show. And we were talking about The Haunting of Hill House. And I said to Chelsea, I'm like, yeah, Chelsea, I couldn't really watch that alone. But Jen, on the other hand, Jen could watch that alone and binge watch it alone. And she's like, what? I'm like, yeah. And I would have to come home. I would have to wait until Ryan got home. And then I'd be able to watch it because otherwise I couldn't do it. And she's like, wow, she's really brave. I'm like, I know. I don't get it.
There's also a method. If you right before you go to bed, after you've already watched it, if you then put on Seinfeld or The Family Guy or something that's the exact opposite of that, it brings you back down a little bit.
Right. Just to lighten the mood.
Yeah.
For a sick like you.
Let me just watch somebody get their
Jen.
guts ripped out, and then I'm going to turn to Seinfeld after and laugh my face off. So
wow. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
You just went through a whole roller coaster of emotions, and I am proud of you, and I don't think any less of you. I think you're amazing.
Thank you.
All right, so today's episode is going to be a little bit different in the sense of we're not going to be harming any bourbon this episode, nor will there be any would you rathers, and some people may be really upset about that, but I kind of took it upon myself to make this decision because, well, right now is the most absolute perfect time to let your mind wander and watch scary movies, right? Because they're so readily available on Netflix and Amazon and even just on regular cable. Mm-hmm. So I kind of thought that these movies really deserved a stage of their own, and these stories deserved a stage just to themselves. So I know that for me, anyways, these movies are the stories that really got underneath of my skin. The stories in which you just can't stop thinking about, and the stories that either at the beginning or the end will say based on a true story. When that comes up in a movie, I'm like, oh my God, that just made it so real.
It gets me I was going to say another thing that I shouldn't say. It gives me the tingly feeling, I get the really excited feeling.
Okay.
It sounds really offside, I know, but it gets me real excited when I see that it's based on a true story. And I'm like, yes.
I know. And then your rational side of your brain starts kind of pumping. And it's I don't want you to believe it, but there's now this pathway, a neurological highway that's trampled down like an old hiking trail. And all I can think about after reading a book like this or watching a movie like this, I just can't help but believe that the paranormal just might be real. Without further ado, on today's episode, we are going to talk about the real facts behind our top 5 based on a true story movies.
The Exorcist. One of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Here is the lovely plot behind it. Accompanied by her 12-year-old daughter, Regan, actress Chris McNeil relocates to Washington, D.C., where she is filming a movie. Mother and daughter have a good relationship, but after a time, Regan begins to act strangely. She undergoes various neurological tests, but doctors can't find anything to explain her behavior. As Regan's situation reaches crisis proportions, she has to be tied to her bed, swears like a sailor, and speaks in tongues. Chris turns to Father Carras, a Roman Catholic priest and psychiatrist, to see if an exorcism might be the solution to their problem. Carras is incredulous, but the church eventually agrees, calling in Father Marin, who has previously conducted an exorcism and come face to face with the devil. The 1973 film, The Exorcist, remains unparalleled as a terrifying and disturbing cinematic experience, mostly because no one has ever made a film like that before. It disrupted the audience's pure thoughts when Regan threw up and vomited all over the priests. Rumors of people vomiting in their popcorn were swirling. No one had ever seen this kind of movie. Paramedics were being called to the theaters because of people passing out. It was an extreme movie. It was something that stuck with people. They were talking about it months after they had seen it. It was truly shocking, really. Let's get into some facts behind the movie. The director says the film writer set out to write a non-fiction account of an exorcism that happened to a 13-year-old boy at a psychiatric clinic in 1949, but had to dramatize the story when it became too difficult to specific details of what happened. They used real tapes from the exorcism, though, and the people who provided the tapes requested that the character be changed to a girl to help protect the identity of the boy who actually experienced the possession. Director Friedkin said that the child grew up having no memory of the incident and went on to an otherwise stable life. Friedkin said he recently retired from a long career at, of all places, NASA. The filmmaker never met that man, but spoke with family members who described telekinetic activities surrounding the child during his apparent possession. The boy's family was Lutheran, and they went through all the stages you see in the film. They went to the doctors, clinics, and finally went back to their own pastor in the Lutheran church, who recommended they see a priest. The director's office just happened to be at 666 Fifth Avenue. And that is where and that is where the actress Linda Blair auditioned for the film. Nice street number, huh?
It's disgusting.
Yeah. One day at 4 a.m, I got a call from a production manager, and he said, "Don't bother coming to work this morning. The set is burning to the ground right now as we speak." Actors Jack McGowan and Vasiliki Malaros both died while the film was in post-production. What makes their deaths strange is that their characters died in the film as well. Other deaths that occurred during the filming of The Exorcist include Linda Blair's grandfather and Max von Sydow's brother, who died on Max's first day of shooting. Also while filming, the son of Jason Miller, who played Father Damien Carras, was nearly killed when a motorcycle hit him. Friedkin used subliminal imagery in the film to unsettle viewers, though he likes to say there are a lot of bullshit theories out there. The truth is he used the sound of bees in some early sequences, which triggers an innate fear response in most people. You don't know why you're uncomfortable, but fight or flight is telling you something dangerous is near. The buzzing of bees is a primal fear. But Friedkin said he also layered in disturbing industrial sounds in the background of the demon scenes, which also create a subconscious desire to back away from danger.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
You know, now that you say that, I feel like the bees thing is true. Because, like, when you think of, like, Candyman, is it Candyman? And, like, other ones like that, like, that sound, like, if you were just out in your backyard and you heard a bee, you wouldn't really, like, be, I mean, you kind of, like, might move out of the way, but you're not as scared as if you heard like a bunch of them clustered together.
It's freaky. So I don't know if it was like the very first kind of Exorcist movie or any time it had been mentioned that I've ever seen, but it terrified me. There were parts that I could not watch. Like when she pees on the floor, I'm like, oh my God, does that actually happen to you? Like when you, oh, that's bad. That's really bad.
Yeah. And not to mention, like, because I was reading up a little bit more on like the casting, and I mean, they had 200 girls audition, and that one girl, you know, obviously clearly she got the role. She really came in strong because she was the only one that wasn't fazed by any of the parts of the movie that they thought she would be bothered by. Like when they're like, are you understanding of this? Do you know what that is? Like, are you okay with that? And she's like, yep. And even like the crucifix scene, you know,
Oh God.
disturbing one there, she was like totally fine with that. And they even said the people on set were like giving her milkshakes in between scenes, and she was giggling and carrying on. So it's like,
Whoa.
either she's like a very special child, or like she was just totally like able to cut like reality from, you know, like, I'm filming a movie, this is my job. And then, you know, she was just able to do that, which most kids her age probably wouldn't be able to. So shocking.
Yeah, good point. That is pretty crazy. So this one I am very familiar with. I just watched it this past week, and it is Conjuring 2, the Enfield Poltergeist. The plot. The Conjuring 2 true story reveals that according to the mother, Peggy Hodgson, the haunting of her Enfield home began on the evening of August 30th, 1977. It was on that night her daughter Janet told her that her brother's beds were wobbling. The next evening, Mrs. Hodgson heard a loud noise come from upstairs. She entered her children's bedroom and saw a chest of drawers moving. She tried to stop the heavy oak chest as it moved towards the door, concluding that an invisible force was trying to trap them into the room. Peggy called the police. The children mostly involved in the case included Margaret, age 13, and Janet, 11. One police constable said that she saw a chair wobble and slide, but could not determine the cause of the movement. Later claims included disembodied voices, loud noises, thrown toys, overturned chairs, and children levitating. The knocking incidents. The knocking would fade in and out as it ran down the wall, supposedly frightening the family so much that they all slept in the same room with the light on. Vic Nottingham, a neighbor, claims that when he went to the home to investigate at the family's request, he heard a knocking on the wall and on the ceiling, leaving him somewhat frightened, I'd say. So how did Janet know about Bill Wilkins? Bill Wilkins was actually a man who lived in the house, but how would an 11-year-old know that information and fake it in a demonic voice? While fact-checking The Conjuring 2, we discovered that this part of the movie was to some degree inspired by audio tapes of the real Janet Hodgson. The recordings, she can be heard conveying a message via an eerie voice, which is supposedly that of Bill Wilkins, a man who had died in the living room of the house several years earlier. Just before I died, I went blind, said the voice. And then I had a hemorrhage and I fell asleep and I died in the chair in the corner downstairs. We are going to play that audio clip for you. So if you don't want to hear something absolutely terrifying, I suggest that you fast forward. And you should probably fast forward for about a minute.
I want you to tell me whether you remember what happened to you when you died. Just before you died and just after you died.
Days before I died, I went blind. Then I had an hemorrhage and I fell asleep and I died in a chair in the corner downstairs.
Bill, if you're there, would you answer me the following question? What have you done with Denise's 30p?
Head after I go downstairs.
Right, Bill, I'll go and look. Thanks so much.
The movie stated that Janet's mother, Peggy, actually died in that same chair later in life. And unfortunately, we could not fact check that information, but the movie does state that information as true at the end of the movie. So who knows?
Creepy.
But that's crazy. So over a period of 18 months, more than 30 people, including neighbors, psychic researchers, and journalists, said that they variously saw heavy furniture moving of its own accord, objects being thrown across the room, and daughters seeming to levitate several feet off the ground. Many also heard and recorded knocking noises and a gruff voice. This story was covered in the Daily Mirror until reports came to an end in 1979. Yuck.
Yucky. But that is another one of my favorites.
Oh, it's so disturbing because there's the nun in there.
Yeah.
And there's the crooked man in there.
Yes.
And they have English accents, which just amplifies the creepiness. I'm just kidding. I do love an accent. But in that movie, it just really worked.
Yeah, definitely.
When they're singing there was a crooked man. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay, so moving on to yet another classic, the Amityville Horror. Based on a true story that was claimed by writer Jay Anson, the Amityville Horror is about a large house on the coast of Long Island where newlyweds George and Kathy Lutz and their 3 children moved into the house that they hope will be their dream house, which ends up in terror. With the help of another priest, Father Bolin, and a police detective, George and Kathy face the fears of the house, but not knowing the forces are planning to possess George and then the children. Let's talk about the Amityville Horror case and unpack some facts you may not have known about the case, the families who once lived on this Ocean Avenue home, and the paranormal occurrences. The DeFeos were all found murdered in the same position, face down in bed. The killer, Ronald DeFeo Jr.'s story has changed repeatedly. He's even said that he was possessed at the time of the killings from some evil within the house. Pictures have surfaced of the spirit of a little boy inside of the home.
Which I posted on our Booze and Bourbon Instagram.
Yes, exactly.
Yuck.
The DeFeo's furniture was still in the home when the Lutz family bought the house. If you believe in energy sticking to objects or holding on to negative energy, then this is super creepy because the furniture was arranged in the exact same locations as the night of the murders. The Lutz only stayed in the home for 28 days. They left everything but their bags. Some of the real experiences during that time that the Lutz family lived there was the priest's hands blistering after blessing the home, unusual cold spots, static on the line when the priest would call, a mysterious imaginary friend named Jody, a window smashing the hand of Daniel, and a secret red room in the basement. All of the families who have lived in the house after the Lutzes have been clear in stating that the house is not haunted.
How could you not have a haunted house when you have a secret red basement in the house? And if I remember correctly, there was a super wide crack in the floor or something that blood would sort of run through. Yeah, so who knows if that part is actually true or not, but having a secret room in the basement is never a good vibe.
Yeah. But I would the furniture still being there and set up in the exact same way. That's pushing it. It's one thing to buy the house, but then now you're just going to leave the furniture there too. So
yeah, you're kind of asking for it or barking up the paranormal tree. So after the break, we have 2 more terrifying stories for you. And enjoy the creepy music until we come back in about 30 seconds. Thanks, guys.
Do not go gently into that good night. Productions.
The next movie is The Rite. Here's the plot. On the brink of renouncing his vows, the skeptical young deacon Michael Kovac reluctantly follows the advice of his mentor, Father Matthew, to study exorcism at the Vatican. Unable to believe in the existence of God or the devil, Doubtful Kovac crosses paths with the unorthodox veteran exorcist, Father Lucas, who is in the middle of the challenging purification process of the possessed 16-year-old girl, Rosaria. Nevertheless, even then, Michael continues to question what he sees. Then, increasingly bizarre occurrences start to take place, and suddenly, reason and science have now become inadequate to rationalize the terrifying demonic forces at work. But the battle against the unseen army of darkness requires courage and unswerving faith. Will Michael's unbelief protect him from evil? The facts. At the Vatican-affiliated, it's called Pontifical, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Pontifical Regina Apostolorum University in Rome, there is a course called Exorcism and the Prayer of Liberation. It was created by Professor Dr. Giuseppe Ferrari and assisted by the school's rector, Father Paolo Scarafoni. According to the Right True Story, Father Gary Thomas, who's portrayed by actor Colin O'Donoghue in the movie, he did attend exorcism classes, among others, during his 9-month stay. He arrived in Rome during the summer of 2005. So if you've watched the movie, the real Michael Kovac follows a practicing exorcist like Anthony Hopkins' character, Father Lucas Trevant. During his sabbatical in Rome, Reverend Gary Thomas decided that it was important to not only learn about exorcisms, but to experience them as well. He sought out exorcists in the city to apprentice with during his stay and was accepted by Capuchin Father Carmine de Philippus, the real Lucas Trevant. During their time together, he witnessed approximately 80 exorcisms. True story. Did a woman really spit up nails during an exorcism? They say yes, but the true story behind the rite reveals that it was not witnessed by Father Gary Thomas himself. According to the book The Rite, The Making of a Modern Exorcist, the incident was told to Father Thomas by a Franciscan priest who was present when a woman vomited 7 black nails, one of which he kept after the rest liquefied before his eyes. Father Carmine, who was the basis for Anthony Hopkins' character, Father Lucas, has not seen this manifestation either. However, the Vatican's chief exorcist who trained him, Father Gabriel Amorth, has. He has more than 70,000 exorcisms. 70,000?
That is an intense amount of exorcisms.
Oh, God. So he has over 70,000 exorcisms to his name and says that he has seen nails and other objects, including shards of glass and radio equipment parts, vomited by possessed people.
Ugh.
Okay. So how does a demon present itself during an exorcism besides in this movie? Each case is apparently different. Exorcists have seen a wide variety of indicators that vary depending on the severity of the possession. In mild cases, the victim often coughs uncontrollably, screams, swears, drools, tremors, yawns, winces, belches, hisses, grunts, growls, froths, fidgets, and or pushes away. Well, you do all that, and I was just going to say,
other than the like frothing or like, you know, that part, I feel like I do everything else. So
swears, drools.
Yeah, I pretty much cover all of those on a normal day. So,
oh my God. Okay. Sometimes possessed beings' actions escalate to hitting, throwing things such as a chair they are in, spitting and flailing, as well as having their eyes roll back into their heads. Well, Jen, you have that too. And in the most severe cases, objects have been vomited. People have seizure-like movements. A mysterious dark liquid has appeared in the area. The victim has spoken in unknown languages. Marks appear on their skin. Jaws dislocate. They contort in unnatural positions. Muscles tense until they are unrecognizable, or they will take on snake-like mannerisms, including sticking out their tongues and coiling up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've learned that at this point, I guess I could have passed for pretty much all of that. I mean,
that is so not true, but I just loved saying that you could pass for that. It was really funny.
Well, no, I mean, other than dislocating my jaw and like coiling up, I mean, the rest of it seems pretty doable. So,
Even the snake-like mannerisms by sticking out your tongue.
yeah.
They say that an exorcism is only needed if the spirit attaches to one's soul, but it will only attach to one's soul once it's invited to. So that's disgusting.
So I guess we shouldn't be so inviting. Maybe
No.
myself, I shouldn't be as inviting.
No, you weirdo. No.
No. Okay. We've learned that now. Okay. So moving on to The Haunting in Connecticut, which I think that you saw as well, but this was another one of my faves.
Yeah, it's a really good one.
Yeah. So after a family is forced to relocate for their son's health, they begin experiencing supernatural behavior in their new home and uncover a sinister history. Matt Campbell, whose real name was Philip, has a terminal cancer. Wait, can I also just add, and we can keep this or we can't, while I just started to read that and stumbled on the word, a housefly just decided to land right on the word. And now it's sitting on the dog's head, and now it's back on the computer. So that's cool. Okay, so continuing on. Matt Campbell, whose real name was Philip, has terminal cancer and is submitted to an experimental treatment in the St. Michael's Hospital, Goatswood in Connecticut. The responsible for the trial, Dr. Brooks, advises that if Matt starts seeing things, he should drop from the trial. His religious mother, Sarah, drives almost 8 hours with her son since he has nausea and needs to vomit during the travel. She proposes her husband, Peter, who had trouble with booze, to rent a house in Connecticut to be close to the hospital despite their second mortgage. Sarah finds an old house with an affordable price, and she questions the catch to the owner, and he explains that the house has a history, since it was a funeral home in the past. Sarah hides the truth to Peter, and the family moves to the house. While in the treatment, Matt befriends Reverend Popescu, who also has cancer. When Matt has weird visions and nightmares from the past, he calls Popescu and tells him that an evil entity is trapped in the house and they are able to see him because they are in the borderline of the worlds of the living and the dead.
That's nice. I wish nobody to ever tell me those words, ever.
Right. No, I'm going to agree with you on that one. So the facts behind the movie. The son Philip, or Matt in the movie, really did have cancer, and they decided to move into the house because the property was closer to the hospital. The home really used to be a funeral home, and the mother apparently didn't know that when they moved in. She claims that there were a lot of renovation materials in the stairwell going down to the basement when she initially looked at the house. Did the mop water turn bloody red? Yes, it did. According to the real mother herself, Carmen Reed, then Carmen Snideker, the mop water was blood red. She said it was a deep, deep red. It made her skin crawl, and she was getting nervous she was ruining the floor. I don't know if that would have been my first concern, but yes.
Oh, darn. The substance I'm using to mop the floor might ruin it.
It was also known that the
Whoopsie.
dishes would put themselves away, like in the movie, and what lights would flicker without bulbs in them. The dishes would put themselves away. I mean, that is actually quite a good thing. Really.
Oh, you don't have a kitchen fairy?
No, but I mean, that sounds intriguing. There really were a bunch of old photos which featured dead people in them. There was a lot of toe tags and even a head tag found in the house as well. Strangely enough, there were also some belongings of the dead customers within the home too. Did the son really burn the house down? No. The oldest son never tried to burn the house down. The filmmakers needed a climactic way to release the demons from the house and created the fire for theatrical purposes. According to the Snedeker family, an exorcism was performed on the house on September 6, 1988, which brought closure to the spirits. Did Ed and Lorraine Warren have involvement in the case? Yes, they sure did. They believed the former funeral workers were guilty of necrophilia, which led to the evil presence. Carmen later reported that former workers were found guilty of the crime, although we were unable to find documentation regarding this claim.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. What Can we just go over what necrophilia is again? Isn't that when you like dead people, like you like...
Yeah, you're romantic with dead people.
Romantic, that was the word I was going to like. You like them a lot. Yes. That just about covers, like, that just about covers it right there. That's a pretty good... there's a lot of similarities there between the actuality and the movie, so...
I know. And I feel like all of these stories can somewhat tie into one another.
Mm-hmm.
Because, there's elements of old houses and weird rooms in the basement. And in this case, it was a funeral home. People getting possessed in almost every scenario we talked about is a thing. And I just feel like this shit's crazy. So if you haven't seen any of these 5 movies, then you should definitely get to watching them, because all this stuff is so readily available right now, guys, until the end of October when Halloween's actually here. This is our time to shine, they say.
And I mean, I would just like to go over the lessons that we learned today. So, 1, do not buy a home that used to be a funeral home.
No.
2, avoid inviting spirits and demons to attach themselves to you.
Good one, yeah.
3, limit your use of spitting, vomiting, swearing, belching, and all of the things that I do on a regular basis, because people might think you're actually possessed. And if you, by chance, find yourself mopping your floor with blood, and or your dishes are putting themselves away, or you feel the need to use crucifixes for dildos, that's probably not a good thing either. So that's what we've learned today.
You might be haunted.
Yeah, you might have a problem there.
Jen, I'm so glad that you've just gone over the most important educational facts that people could have taken away from today's episode. So thank you very, very much.
No problem.
Well, so guys, if you're looking for more content on Booze and Bourbon, we now have a TikTok.
So exciting.
Booze Podcast. BOOS Podcast. So make sure you check that out.
I can't wait to actually post a Jen's demonic possession video and include all of the things that I just said.
Oh, perfect. Excellent. Remind me to give you the login information so you can do that.
Perfect.
All right. And also, Jen, where else can people find us?
We are on Instagram, Booze and Bourbon, Facebook, Booze and Bourbon the podcast. You can, of course, listen to us on any lovely app provider that plays podcasts. We are also part of the ABV network, so you can listen to us there as well if you do not have a iPhone or a apparatus that plays podcasts. I don't know if apparatus was the word, but it fit right in.
I love it. It's perfect. It's perfect. Also, guys, we have a Patreon. So if you want to get some cool stuff, if you want to support your fellow girls over at Booze and Bourbon, you can log on to our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/booze and bourbon. And we also have a Redbubble store, which we've been selling some of our Just Here for the Booze t-shirts. So that's exciting.
We do really appreciate that as well. And I can't wait to purchase more things myself. So
me too. Yeah. Me too. All right. So guys, thanks so much for listening. Make sure you come back next Friday for an all new episode that is still part of our Halloween October Spooktacular. We also have a really great episode coming out on October 30th with Maddie Blake, who is the host of the Curse of Oak Island TV shows Drilling Down. And he also has a podcast with his friend, Ronnie LeBlanc, and it's called Monsterland. So we're going to get the chance to interview him and talk about one of our unexplored topics that is extremely fascinating to us both. So make sure you tune in to that on October 30th. Thanks so much, guys, for listening, and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Booze and Bourbon is part of the ABV network. For more information or to advertise on the show, please head over to abvnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, and cheers.
This has been a Steve Akeley production.